Hi, my name is Patrick Berschauer, Risk and Safety Director for Smith Gardens and Pacific Plug and Liner. Welcome to Smith Gardens. Today we're going to talk about some safe work practices that can help us as merchandisers in the store and in parking lots and all around the garden center as we try to complete our work. Your safety is very important to yourself, to your teammates, and to others that depend on you. As you become familiar with this new job, please do not hesitate to reach out to a supervisor or a manager, or even contact me personally to talk about anything that may seem unsafe or areas where you may be unsure about what it is that we're trying to accomplish. If we can work together with one another, communicating about our jobs, we can work efficiently and we can work safely. As we talk about working safely today, we are going to reference what's called the breath technique. This is not a fancy or complicated technique. It is simply a manner that we have come up with to help us consider what it is we are about to do and how to do it safely before we actually jump into the task that is in front of us. The breath technique is easy. All you have to do is breathe. The hardest part is actually stopping long enough to do it. Here's how this works. I'm about to do a task. There is a lot to do. I might even feel some pressure to get this task done so I can move on to the next tasks that are in front of me. Here are some things I can think about while I breathe. Who or what might be around me? Are there tools or customers or other store associates working right here that might get in my way? Are there any things in the area that might prevent me from doing my job well? Am I ready to push, pull, lift, or carry the objects I'm about to work with? Do I need a ladder to reach the height of the product that I'm about to work with? Are there any things in my way that I should move before I start this task? Do I need any assistance, even for just a moment, before I try to lift what's in front of me? Am I in a hurry? If so, what's more important, the job that I'm about to do or me? The answer is you and me, us. This job requires that we are able to be here to do it. So it's important that we pause, breathe, and consider how to do the task in front of us as safely as possible. As we look at the parts of our job, let's start with racks. Racks are one of the primary tools used to get product to stores and to move product around in stores. There are important things to keep in mind when we're using racks. Where are they and where should they be? How to handle them, pulling and pushing them, and where to put our hands, and knowing what is around us when we move them. Racks often start the day on the side of the garden center at a location where the truck drivers were able to offload them. As we plan our day and begin to unload the racks, we may place the racks at or near aisles where we are going to work. Let's look at how to handle racks. Here's one of the first areas we can practice our breathing technique. While we want to get racks placed and unloaded as quickly as possible, there are a number of things to consider.
Pull racks as often as possible with the turning wheels next to you. When the turning wheels are away from us, the rack may twist and turn in a way that is outside of our control. It's important to be mindful of where we place our hands on racks. Racks have posts with holes that support each shelf. If we place our fingers in these holes, we put ourselves at risk of serious finger injuries. Instead, we should practice purposely placing our hands on posts of where we are grabbing and then moving the rack. It's just as important to be mindful of where we place our feet when we are working with racks. Racks are heavy and mobile. The wheels of racks can easily run over toes and feet if we're not mindful of our feet positioning while working with racks. Just like our hands, we should practice purposely placing our feet and thinking about where they are in relationship to the rack while we move it.
Here's an example of the breathe technique coming into play. Usually, we will have our hands gripping the rack post so that our hands are outside of the rack. There are times in tight spaces when adjusting our hands to the inside may be very effective for moving the rack and much safer to help us avoid hitting stationary objects. When we breathe and consider what we are about to do, good ideas like this are given the opportunity to be expressed. Hoses are a tool in the garden center that both help us and hurt us. It is important to consider how we can best safely use hoses. Some hoses in the garden center are on reels. These are great for keeping hoses tucked up out of the way when they are not in use. Most hose reels will allow you to freely pull the hose where you need it. Typically, if you pull the hose, it will rewind by itself. If you don't want the hose to rewind, you pull it and wait for 3 clicks. Stop pulling after the 3 clicks and the hose will not rewind until you pull it again. These are common instructions, but not all hose racks are the same. You'll want to become familiar with the hose reels where you work. Okay, let's breathe again. We're about to work with hoses that are typically on the ground in often crowded or congested areas and in areas where there can be several people. When we stop to breathe and consider what we are about to do, we can make sure we are carefully placing hoses where they are least likely to be a tripping problem for ourselves or others. We can also make sure that we are familiar with how the faucet works, how the hose reels work, and how to notify others that it may be slippery or at least wet while we do our work. We've talked about doing some work activities that are on the ground and move around. Now, let's look at times when we may need to use a ladder. Ladders are always a good reminder that we need to breathe. When we talk about breathing before using ladders, we are talking about knowing things like where we will place the ladder for our work and considering if it is in the way of others. We also consider how we will move up and down the ladder, or in this case on the video, a portable staircase. We want to make sure that we are deliberately looking at the steps as we go up and down the ladder or the portable staircase. When we place the ladder, we try to get our work done, then move the ladder versus doing part of a job and leaving the ladder. As much as possible, we want ladders out of the way. To do this, we need to breathe, consider what we're doing, what will happen next, and then make our plan for doing our work. One of the most important areas where we can practice breathing and considering what we are doing next is when we need to move heavy items. A good portion of our heavy things are included with third-party products, especially shrubs and trees. As many of these products are heavy, we need to consider how we lift and move them. Many times these arrive in stacked pallets, and sometimes the pallets are not necessarily in great shape. As we breathe and consider this work, some important points will come to mind. This is work typically best done as a team. When we work in a team, communication and speaking to one another about what we are doing or need to do is important. We can also keep in mind that this work may start in one place, but it will end in another, and there may be steps in between. Here's an example of trees multi-stacked. Each pot is heavy. Where these are located is not necessarily where they will end up. In this case, these are in garden center, but their final destination is the parking lot. When we breathe and consider what our next steps may be, we can conclude that we will need to downstack each pot. We will likely need to fix how the pallets are positioned on the ground after we downstack the product. Then we can consider restacking a few pots on a pallet to transfer them to the parking lot. This will be a multi-step process, and it's good that we recognize that from the beginning. We will find that garden centers are made up of tables that are typically set up on bricks or other types of supports. From time to time, these need to be set up or taken down or otherwise rearranged. These are great opportunities to stop, breathe, and plan safe work for whatever the task may be. Looking at tables gives us a chance to see a few common safe work practices. When we need to reach, carry, and lift for product, it is critically important that we carry what we can handle, that we keep in mind that we want to keep the weight of the product as close to our body as possible, and that we both bend our legs as well as lift with our legs when we're about to carry things. In the video, we see examples of these efforts. We also see people working together when lifts can be heavy or awkward. Pallet jacks are a tool we may use from time to time to lift and move pallets. Using pallet jacks is an excellent time to breathe and consider how to do our work safely. Most of us do not use pallet jacks regularly, so pausing long enough to breathe and consider what we're doing is important. We first want to approach the pallet jack and become familiar with how it works. Grip it with both hands. Take a few turns to understand how it moves and turns, and become familiar with how to raise and lower it. The pallet jack you use will have a lever on the handle. The lever is used to engage or disengage the hydraulic lift. Become familiar with which position the lever needs to be in to raise or lower the jack. When pushing or pulling a load, be sure to keep both hands on the handle and keep your body facing the pallet jack. This will ensure we do not strain or overexert muscles while using the jack. As we go to work, it is important that we remember that we need to take time to get ready to work. Sometimes getting ready to work is as simple as a small breath that gives us enough pause to really consider what we need to do our job reliably. So we encourage you, let's take a deep breath and go have a great season. Thank you for working at Smith Gardens.